Hi, my name is Niamh Byrne, and welcome to my podcast, Honey, You're Trans. My goal is to spread awareness around the transgender community. I'm hoping that by sharing my journey, it helps those struggling to take that initial first step. But also, I'm hoping that it can help family members, friends, colleagues, wider society understand what we are going through. So come join me on my journey. Hi, my name is Niamh Byrne, and my pronouns are she and her. And welcome to my very first episode. Thank you for joining. I'm hoping to spread awareness around the transgender community because unfortunately we are under attack on a global level. There is so much misinformation and incorrect information being spread about our community. We are treated as deviants who are going to attack women and children in Thailand. And this couldn't be further from the truth. All we want to do is pee. So I'm hoping that by sharing my journey, you get a better understanding of who we are. So I transitioned later in life. I didn't have the strength, but more so the support to take this journey when I was younger. Like you have to think about back then, access to information wasn't that readily available. We had to go to a library. We used media, films, movies, shows. And unfortunately, we weren't portrayed nicely, and then we were treated, as I said before, deviants. People who were junkies, were victims, who were the enemy mostly. But thankfully today we have better access to information. People are able to see that they're not alone, that there's more people like you out there, that what you're going through is what most of us have gone through, but didn't know that anyone else was going through. So, like I said, I did transition later in life. So, 5 years later, I'm sitting here as me. It was a difficult decision, especially later in life, because up till then, everyone knew me as a guy, knew me by a different name. And then for me personally, I had the fear of, well, what will my family think? What will my friends think? What will my colleagues think? Will this be the end of my career? Will I be forced out of my company? Will my career path suddenly stop? These are all things that we process and deal with before we take that initial first step. And unfortunately, some people can never take that first step because of this fear. And they never get to truly be happy on the inside and let people see the amazing person that they were really meant to be. So that's what we're here today to do, is to try help society understand who we are, and more so let people struggling with that decision take that initial first step, know that it's okay. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to shine. You deserve to let the world see how amazing you really are, and to be happy on the inside. That's the most important thing. If anyone takes anything away from this, is that you are an amazing human being and you deserve to be happy. So, like I said, I did transition later in life because back when I was a child and in my 20s, people didn't really understand what transgender means. Even today, people don't understand what it means. And like I said, we didn't have access to information back then. So it was difficult. Like as a child, I knew I was different. I knew I couldn't tell anyone I was different, but I didn't know why, which was very odd. And it was definitely a weight on my shoulders that I carried my whole life. Because back then, boys were boys, girls were girls. You were taught don't cry like a little girl. You weren't allowed to play with girls' toys. You couldn't be yourself. You had to be the boy. You weren't allowed to show feelings, which was difficult, especially when I didn't know why I felt the way I felt, because I had no information. My parents didn't have the information to see it in me, so I could have been happy from a young age. Like, I'm not saying that I wasn't happy growing up. I have an amazing family. My parents are brilliant. I have a loving sister and nephew. But I had a good life, but I was sad on the inside for most of it, which is the difficult part. And anyone who's transitioned, listen to this, will understand that. Or anyone who's struggling with taking that initial first step will identify with these feelings. Because back then, I struggled hard because I didn't know who I was. And, it led to depression in my 20s. Because I couldn't understand. I couldn't be true to myself. I didn't know why I wanted to be female. I didn't know why all of a sudden I had inner turmoil. And it led to depression. It led to suicide attempts, unfortunately. But I managed to find my way through the light, and I still didn't have the information and support I needed. Even the medical professionals tried to convince me that I was confused about my sexual identity, which angers me to say because it's completely different. But I decided to try and bury Niamh as deep as I could, but eventually she wanted to be free, and she's sitting here in front of you today. It's like it is difficult to go back to these thoughts at times because it's sad, but they're important thoughts to share with people. Like I said, I transitioned later in life. I finally got to the stage where I had to be true to myself. Because at the time, I lost one of my childhood friends. He died in his sleep. And then you add in COVID, and it just put life into perspective. You shouldn't regret anything. You should be happy. You should be true to yourself, because we're only here for a short period of time on this amazing little planet of ours. And we all deserve to live happy lives and be true to ourselves. So I decided to transition. I decided that this is something I had to do. I couldn't, not that I couldn't, but I didn't want to be miserable and sad on the inside. I was tired of portraying this poker face. And then I was happy and smiley, going about my job, commuting to work and back. And I was miserable. I was seeing all these amazing women around me. I knew I was, but I couldn't tell people. And that was a real struggle. So I made the decision. This is it. This is what I have to do with my life. And that time, it was so freeing. The weight that just lifted off my shoulders was immense. It was free. I could sit up straight again. Was it scary? Yes. It was daunting what was ahead of me. So I looked up as much information as I could online, but even 5 years ago, there was very little information and it was very difficult to find. So I went to my doctor, who was very supportive, and he was like, "Great, I'm going to refer you to Loughlinstown, which is the one clinic that deals with transgender people in Ireland." I'll get to that in a sec. But I'm going to go back to my 20s when the doctors were kind of pushing that I was confused about my gender or my sexual identity. My gender identity, didn't see that. He looked through my own doctor at the time, looked through my file, and he was like, how did this not get caught? And he went back through, and next he went back to my 20s, and he seen a letter from the consultant that I was seeing, and said I was confused about my sexual identity, and that made me so angry in that amount of time. I kind of went quiet. I couldn't process the anger I was dealing with, but my doctor said he would refer me, and he was brilliant. He was so supportive. He said, "That's it." But then hit me with another shocker. He was like, "Okay, so the wait list is about 3 years." I was like, "What?" Because I made this massive decision to do it and to be true to myself and let everyone know who I was. And then all of a sudden, the care, the support I needed wasn't available. I had to wait 3+ years to get the support. So I was back to living in limbo. And funny enough, just as we do this podcast, or recorded this episode yesterday, I got my letter from Loughlinstown for the initial consultation, which stirred up a lot of different emotions in me. So I basically now have 1 week to reply to them, or I'll lose my place in the list. And if my doctor refers me again, apparently to the letter, I'll be put at the bottom of the list, which unfortunately today is around 10 years for someone to be assessed as transgender. And that's the shocking state of our healthcare, state of trans healthcare in Ireland. Luckily, I found a private or true, but not everyone can afford to go privately. And even my endocrinologist closed his private practice. So for me, it brought up a lot of emotions today. Yesterday, last night, thinking about it, like I had to wait 4 years, I believe, maybe a little longer, get this letter, and then they're telling me I have a week. Like, what if I moved houses? What if the letter got lost? What then? Like, what if it got lost in the postal service? It's scary, like that they're willing to give me 7 days to basically kind of reply, or I lose my place. And that's basically what we're faced with. When you get to Lockstown, from what I've heard from community, it's not a pleasant assessment. Like questions you wouldn't ask any other member of society. You wouldn't be asked to prove you're transgender. You wouldn't be asked to prove, well, we're being asked to be are we transgender? You wouldn't be asked to prove you're gay, you're male, you're female. But I won't go into what type of questions people are asked, but it's not questions you would ask any other part of society. It's an outdated model that needs to change. Because right now there is only that public clinic or a private route if you could manage to find them. For me, I had to get a clinical diagnosis. I had to get a clinical psychologist to give me a diagnosis, which was a lot of money. It cost me roughly €800. After that, I had to try find an endocrinologist who would take me on as a patient, which again was difficult. but thankfully I did find one. But it has its issues as well because it's very difficult to get in touch with the clinic because they're so overwhelmed. It just shows the state of our healthcare system. For gender affirming procedures, you have to go out of the country because it's not available in Ireland. And physicians don't really have a lot of knowledge around transgender people. So this is issues we really need to change. And seeing that letter yesterday, right before I recorded this, definitely brought up a lot of emotions. Like having to wait so long, like if I had to wait 4 years, and now people are expected to wait up to 10 years just to get into the system to have an assessment is shocking. And that's just what our community is facing on one front. Healthcare for transgender community is pretty much non-existent in Ireland. The children's service doesn't exist anymore, so parents who are trying to care for their children have to get assistance outside of Ireland. And it doesn't get much better for adults, unfortunately. We have one clinic in the entire country who handles transgender people, who will give people a diagnosis of being transgender. And unfortunately, like I said, that wait list is up to 10 years now, which is a lifetime for people. And you don't have much options at that stage. You can seek bodies outside of Ireland to help with your transition, but that has its issues as well. You can try deny who you are, hide who you are for 10 years, which is impossible once you've made that choice. The other option is to socially transition for 10 years, which again is difficult because you look different. Without the gender affirming service, you're going to stand out a little bit. Because when I started my social transition, people like stare too long, pointed, try to get a second look at me just because I look different than what they think I should look like. Because you do look a little different when you're transitioning, especially socially transitioning. You're dressing a little different. You're trying to find your style. You're trying to do in a couple of months what most people spend their whole lives doing is finding their style, their look. Me, I had to grow out my hair, so it did look a little different. And I can still remember to this day, a couple during COVID sitting in their car at traffic lights while I was out doing my 5K walk. They were literally sitting in their car, pointing and laughing at me as I stood in front of them. Like, who has the right to do that? Like, who did they think they were? Like, that they could actually judge someone for how they look? But I expect someone to have to deal with that kind of focus for 10 plus years is unbelievable. And we need to do better. And we need society to understand that this is what we have to go through. Like, we've all seen the wait lists for different services within the healthcare system, and they're shocking. But for trans people, it's worse. Imagine waiting 10 years to get a diagnosis. It's a lifetime sentence for someone. Because, as I said, you make this decision, kind of say, here I am, world, this is who I am, and I need your help. You just have to wait for 10 years. So I'm like, no. We have to do better as a society. We have to protect those coming after us. We need to make the world better for them so they never have to bear these kind of weights on their shoulders. So I think this is probably a good place to finish up the first episode. I just want to thank you for joining me on this journey. I know I mainly talked about healthcare or the lack of healthcare in Ireland, but it's a pretty important topic for us to talk about. And I think it's important for society to see what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So in the next episodes, I hope we can delve more into different parts of my journey. And I hope it helps you if you're starting your transition or if you're just going through it like me. And I'm hoping also that it helps your colleagues, your friends, most importantly, your family, understand what you're going through. Hope it answers questions for them that they don't know how to ask you right now. Or maybe you don't have the answers for them right now. So once again, thank you for joining me. And I can't wait to talk to you again on the next episode.